October 15th, 2021, el 15 de octubre de 2021. Yeah, I kind of had fun doing that video a week ago in Spanish and English. And, you know, I lived in Argentina 6 years, and I love the Argentine people. I love people that speak Spanish, and I love people that speak English too. I remember coming up here a long time ago. It's been a beautiful, it has a fence here now. Look, the fence is here. But I stuck my little hand, or my hand, through the fence here. And that's Salt Lake City. New buildings going up over there. Gosh, it's even hard to find the temple almost nowadays. Holy cow. Jeez. Well, there's Hotel Utah. Wow, it's hard to see it from up here. There's the state capital of Utah. And this video, 111, cool. It's about the conversation between Roseanne Barr and Juan and Savin. I just listened to the whole thing. I like to focus and think about the big picture. I like to check out. There's Ensign Peak. So I'm feeling. Hola Sol, ¿qué tal? I'm feeling good right now. It's a beautiful day, beautiful view. Like I said, winter is set in here. But I want to talk about big picture stuff. Juan and Savin and Roseanne Barr. To me, it was a very interesting conversation. And it's very interesting when two intelligent people, you know, Juan talks most of the time, but Roseanne asks some heavy questions and talks about heavy concepts. Roseanne's Jewish and very spiritual. I mean, she knows the scriptures too. Juan knows the scriptures. Así que fue muy interesante escuchar a Juan and Savin y también a Roseanne Barr. I've never pronounced her name in Spanish before, so perdóname con eso. But it was on YouTube. It'll probably still be there. I suggest highly that, you know, if you're interested in big picture stuff, it just, we always, you know, remember I saw a Catholic priest do a great sermon in Argentina, in Gualeguaychú, Argentina, la provincia de Entre Rios. It's kind of above Buenos Aires. And the Catholic priest, you know, he had these two, his world had balls. He goes, we're always like this. And we forget, you know, about what things are really about because we're going in circles all the time. Well, it's a profound thing because the history of the Roseanne Barr and Juan and Savin talk about the history of the planet. And Juan, very interesting to me how much he knows the scriptures, and he knows business, and he knows cars. Heaven knows that. But he goes back to Adam and Eve. There's the Mormon temple down there. Can't see it right now. But I've been through that Mormon temple. There's actors that do the temple ceremony, or there were. I don't know if there are any more. But I went through the temple over 150 times, and I liked it every single time. And part of the temple ceremony talks about Adam and Eve, which basically comes from the book of Genesis. And then Juan, very interesting how he talks about a book about Adam and Eve. But to me, it's fascinating when Juan talks about Adam and Eve because, you know, it gets kind of racy in there, but Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden. You know, they're in their nature suits. And then the devil comes along and seduces Eve. And Juan talks about that. And Juan talks about, you know, that resulted in Eve giving birth to Cain. And I hadn't heard this before, but Juan talks about Cain and Abel being twins. Very interesting. But I remember it's in the scriptures too, because Eve, you know, it seems, I mean, Satan seduced her, okay? The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. And then, you know, the real deep stuff, which it's time to go deep because things are biblical or whatever you want to say. But, you know, Adam's sitting there thinking, you know, you try to understand things. I do. Juan does, and Roseanne does too. Roseanne, amazing how successful and intelligent and together she is. It was very interesting. I was driving around most of the time, but I looked at it, and to see her face, pensive, she looked really good. Juan, you never see his face, you see his boots, but that's Juan, the international man of mystery. That's what he does. I'm sure he has his reasons. But Adam thought, well, you know, Eve evidently, you know, had a strong libido, and which is the natural thing to do. But he thought, well, if I don't, you know, mate with Eve, then nothing's going to happen here. So they end up mating, and so you have Cain and Abel, and that's how the Bible begins. And Juan does a great job at telling Bible stories. And then I'm very, frankly, impressed with the way Roseanne pipes in and talks about government being formed from, you know, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books in the Old Testament. And Roseanne's Jewish, and I think she started speaking Hebrew at the end. But I am glad that I had a chance to listen to that. An amazing exchange. And Juan ends up talking about this is the promised land. He talks about when the Jim Caviezel movie's going to come out, Sound of Freedom. And he talks about an event in Las Vegas, which he says is going to be historic and memorable, and it's in Las Vegas next weekend. And by the grace of my subs, I'm going. I got a ticket. Thank you. And then another, you know, I'm kind of doing okay now. I'm kind of like in my retirement phase of life. I've never fit into the regular thing, and I guess that's why I've just read a lot. I wasn't a 9-to-5 type guy, and I still am not. But what's important, folks, are principles, not personalities. So Roseanne, of course, is very famous, Roseanne Barr, and Juan, there's speculation about who he is and who these other people are, but I listen to what they're talking about. And to me, Juan Savin is a good man talking about really important things. And it kind of doesn't matter if you're religious. It doesn't matter. We're going through a ton of trials and tribulations on this earth, you know. Sure, I'm a finance guy, so it's obvious to me that it's going to collapse. You know, one of my videos a long time ago, I should put it up, is that paper money is going to be worthless. And I think I glanced down and they had a pyramid on the dollar bill. It says Novus Ordo Seclorum, which I think in Latin is New World Order. So they talk about stuff, and Juan jumps around, and Roseanne seems like she's ready to leave, and then she gets into it, and then Juan is delivering a message. The world's going to change. He talks about Moses and how they were, you know, taking out all the babies in the Bible. There's an eternal feud between the bloodlines of Cain and the bloodlines of Abel. The bloodlines of Abel don't necessarily want to kill the bloodlines of Cain. And Juan makes a point that, you know, it doesn't really have to do, it has to do with lineage, not your skin color. It does have to do with lineage. I like getting as tan as I can. In fact, I'm excited. If I go down to Vegas, it looks like it's going to be 82. I might be bagging some rays. Hey, rays. Okay. Oh my gosh, there's yarrow. That stops nosebleeds immediately. There's alfalfa. I think that's alfalfa. Yeah, that's the king of plants, 50% protein. But I'll kind of leave that alone right now and stick with the big picture theology. Juan and Roseanne talk about the Garden of Eden. They talk about Moses crossing the Red Sea, and Juan's making or an analogy with Red October, because there's going to be a lot of changes. The financial changes are happening and are going to happen, and we're going to go to a new financial system because the debt system was meant to collapse, and we're going to get to see the collapse. It's going to be interesting. So the main thing, actually, one time Chip and we ate alfalfa, and it is amazing, and yarrow is amazing too. I remember, have a nosebleed, just put a little yarrow on, gone immediately. Nosebleed's gone immediately. Things can change overnight, and this is a month of a lot of changes. Juan talks about the Esther moment. Roseanne can relate to that. Roseanne's a very spiritual woman, very wise woman. I didn't watch her show. I wasn't Mr. TV growing up. I just wasn't watching TV, and I wasn't into watching sports. But these times are biblical. Massive changes are coming. There's going to be some famine. And the thing with China and Taiwan and all that, it's going to be a near-death experience like Juan says. But you come up here and you look at the mountains, the green grass. I love this, I just love this. I love the beauty. I love it. But there's people that don't love it, and they want to destroy this beautiful planet. And then Juan said something very interesting I noticed also. He said, this is the promised land. Bien hecho, Juan. Vamos a ver si todavía estamos filmando. I'm sorry for you Spanish folks. I got to do it like a separate channel in Spanish. There's going to be some death and destruction. But on the other side of it, there's going to be cleansing and a beautiful life ahead. The whole 1,000 years of peace is true. Roseanne and Juan talk about government, and there's totalitarianism, and there's libertad total or demasiado, complete anarchy. No, I'm going to stick with the English. Sorry for you. Whoa, look at that. Almost Tiffany blue. Beautiful, huh? That's a beautiful color. Okay. So if you have too much government, you have tyranny, and you're free. Your mind's always free. They talk a lot about slavery and things like that, but I feel pretty free right now. And if you don't have any law, then you don't really protect the innocent. Like, let's say right now, I see somebody hurting a child or something. I'm going to stop it. Not that that's the government, but I think it would be legal. But the thing, it's moral. So this legalistic stuff, the right thing to do is to save that child that's getting beat up or that vulnerable person. And I did that one time with a homeless guy in Seattle. Some jerk was hitting a homeless guy with a tire iron, and I walked up and stopped it. Kind of middle of the day when a lot of people, nobody did anything until I did it. So you got to do it sometimes, folks. You just got to, oops, hope the sun's not too bright on that one. You got to do, like I was watching this blonde lady that was with Juan last night. Did a thing with Tom Numbers and Juan and somebody else last night. You're making your own movie. You're writing your own life. Think big. It's not about being conceited or proud, but it's about doing good things for the salvation, or so people are happy. Man is that he might have joy. I can tell that Juan knows about a lot of scriptures outside the Bible. He started talking about the book of Adam and Eve. That was pretty amazing. Let's see if we can get some. Yep. Salt Lake City. Yep, I was in that Masonic temple. I have to tell you, it was a trip. And he talks about Charlton Heston and the chariots, and I feel kind of grateful. But Arnold Freeberg, I'm in jail. Arnold Freeberg, he did the art in the Book of Mormon, and he did all the canvases and art for Cecil B. DeMille's movie, The Ten Commandments, with Charlton Heston. Juan talked about that. And it's interesting, but all the murals of the ceremonies in the Masonic Temple there were also done by Arnold Freeberg. And I'm kind of happy I got a chance to meet him, take a picture with him, and hang out with him a little bit at Eldridge G. Smith's 106th birthday. Eldridge G. Smith is a direct descendant of, or was, he's up in heaven now, of Hyrum Smith, last patriarch of the Mormon Church. So I highly suggest listening to Juan and Savin and Roseanne Barr. Here you have a very talented Jewish lady that loves her religion, and you've got Juan and Savin, who he loves the truth, and he loves justice, and he doesn't like to see innocent people and beings, especially children, hurt. And it's interesting because I think Juan and Savin is a very modest man, but he hangs out with Jim Caviezel, and very interesting. In fact, I think he dropped a clue that Jim Caviezel walked 526 miles, which sounds to me like that might have been filmed, which could lead to another project. Love one another as I has loved you. That's what Jesus Christ said, and that's, that's the way to go. Just driving up here by myself. I got to see a friend today, which was really nice. Yeah, he lives over there. He was looking good. Really nice friend. But he's a returned missionary, I'm a returned missionary, but we choose not to go to the building anymore. And there's, hundreds of thousands of people that maybe I can get closer to God in the mountains, or reading the scriptures by myself, or floating in the Salt Lake, or driving down to Vegas and the border in Yuma, than being in a building. And we need to cut each other slack. I remember looking in the phone book in high school. I think there was 2,700 different churches. Judge not lest you be judged. If somebody doesn't want to go to church, then fine. If Roseanne's going to smoke a cigarette, which I don't think she did, but I wasn't watching all the time, and talk about the Bible, let her do it. If I'm going to have a cup of coffee with a friend occasionally and talk about the Book of Mormon, then I want to do it. The sanctimonious folks, they're in the Bible, okay? Sadducees and Pharisees. And you'll see people that are self-righteous, or as soon as they make a few million bucks, they think that they're the way to go, or they got a degree that says MD, and they think they're, like a god or something. I don't think Jesus had a real high net worth, and but I think his worth as a soul, you can't put a price on it. He's the savior of every being on this whole planet. So Juan and Savin and Roseanne Barr, I listened to it, and by the grace of God, I'm up here in kind of a beautiful, thought-provoking place. And then Juan says a prayer, and Roseanne says a prayer. I think some pioneers like Brigham Young, they prayed up there, did ordinances up there. So, church bells. When I lived in San Francisco on Nob Hill, Grace Cathedral, that's how you tell the time of day. 1 all the way up to I think they stopped at 10 at night. I think 10 was the last one. Boom, boom. Folks, this promised land is founded on freedom of thought and religion. The people that came over here, and the people here in Utah, they left the U.S. government because the U.S. government was corrupt when they left in 1847. the U.S. government would not protect the Mormons. And in fact, they sent people out here to kill the Mormons. So this is what's left over. Not too shabby. A beautiful place. But always when there's prosperity, a lot of times pride will kick in. Pride cometh before the fall. The meek shall inherit the earth. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.